Hey friends, happy Sunday morning. This is Lisa from Life with Fife and Creative Vermont. And this is a podcast where we talk about knitting, creativity, spirituality, and how all of that is intertwined and connected with our state of mind, our happiness, how we live as productive and happy people living meaningful lives. So I want to just come in today and this has been quite a week, and I know that I can't be the only one who's feeling a little disoriented and little lost about how to carry on when things happen in the world that are so discouraging. And yet at the same time, we have this beautiful spring day today, late spring, early summer day, and the flowers are blooming and the garden is growing, and clearly life goes on. And how do we make sense of things, and how do we acknowledge and honor all the things that we feel, and also take care of ourselves in a way that we can still turn to our creative projects and take that seriously and help and use that to make our lives meaningful. So even before all this happened in the last week, I was feeling a little bit not really connected to my knitting, and I couldn't really figure out what's going on. Is it because, and I'm going to share with you what I have been doing with my knitting, so that will come up. I'm going to talk about this contiguous shoulder that I'm working on and learning some interesting things. But just to be real with you, I was not feeling really connected to my knitting. It just didn't feel like what I wanted to do. I wanted to be outdoors. I wanted to be in the garden. And it made me think about it, kind of made me look objectively at how this process is. In the winter, it's all I want to do when I have a free moment is sit down with my knitting. And part of it, I think, has to do with that it's a practical thing, right? That I really want the finished product. I mean, some people are knitters who love the process of knitting. I am someone who knits for the product. I'm all about the product. I want the sweater, I want the shawl, I want to wear it. And in the winter, it's cold. Here in Vermont especially, you need warm things. And then as the weather gets warm, what is practical? The garden becomes practical. And so I start to think about being outside and getting my garden started. And I'm excited to share with you, if you're interested in seeing some videos of this year's garden. It's really been an amazing process from last year to this year with the soil health and the compost and what we have that's growing in our greenhouse. And we've moved things around, and I'm delving into flowers. And so it's a really, I have a lot. I'm so excited. And if you'd like to see that, please comment and let me know that you would like to see a gardening video, or maybe you're just here for the knitting. I don't know. Maybe it's, but I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to know where you guys are at, if you also enjoy being in the garden. Because today I'm going to talk about how nature can be a healing salve for these times, and also how nature can connect us to the inspirational part of ourselves that is the antidote to depression and sadness and feeling hopeless and lost. So there's actually there's been some studies that talk about this connection, which I thought was really interesting, and I'm going to get to that in just a second. But I read this poem by David White, who I love very much, and he talks about, this is a poem that is in his latest book. Where did I put it? It's in his latest book, Sweet Darkness, and the poem goes like this: when your eyes are tired, the world is tired also. When your vision has gone, No part of the world can find you. Time to go into the dark where the night has eyes to recognize its own. It's just a simple poem. And I think it talks exactly about this, this when we are tired, that it's like this interconnection between ourselves and nature, that we really are one. And when one part of ourselves is depleted, that we can actually go to the other side and we can gain energy and inspiration and life from that. And so then that also put into perspective why it is that I like to go into the garden. It maybe is also that through the winter, my knitting inspires me, the projects inspire me, the patterns inspire me, the books that I read inspire me. And then when the outdoor world, the outside comes to life, that inspires me, and it draws me out. And there's so much to be taken from the natural world and knitting, right? The patterns that we see in nature, the colors we see, and it's so uplifting, right? To just come out into the garden after this long winter and see a flower blooming. It's so inspirational. And, I'm also, you can probably hear in my voice, I'm still a little congested. I think, I tested negative so many times, but I think I had COVID a few weeks ago. I slept for 3 days. And I can't remember a time, I was saying to my husband, like, can you ever remember in the 21 years we've been together that I've gotten sick with the flu in the middle of May? And it just is like, so it was just like I was sleeping for 3 days and I just felt so completely exhausted. And yet I tested and tested, but now I'm hearing that this new strain, you don't test until like day 4 or 5, and I tested up until day 4 and I still was negative, but I have this lingering cough. I still feel tired, and that I think is contributing. And so many people have gotten COVID in the last couple of weeks, and I think that also contributes to just this feeling of like, disconnect. But and that also being outside is the natural antidote for exactly that. And there was this study that I read, if I can just find it. Yeah. So that people who spend time in nature, artists, and there was literally a study done in Denmark that showed that people who spent more time in nature had reported less feelings of depression, that artists who spent time in nature reported greater creativity. And it's not just the phenomenon of being out in this beautiful nature, which is part of it. There is a piece of it that it has to do with being a part of something bigger than yourself and being aware of that, and but not feeling it when you're out in nature, when you're in a mountain, when you're in a beautiful field, when you just have your hands in the ground digging for your garden. You can just feel that there is something greater than yourself and that you are part of something. And so that's actually been documented, and that's actually part of what people, what allows them to feel less anxiety and more connection. But it literally changes the frontal cortex. We use our prefrontal cortex all the time in technology, right? During the day, when we're on the computer, when we are watching our screens, we are processing so much information, and that's what our brains are doing all the time. We just are processing and processing, and it's like we're taking in information. At the same time, there's so much information, it's overwhelming, and it feels overwhelming. It contributes to this feeling of, not being able to take it all in. And almost, it's the opposite experience of being out in nature, where you would think it might feel overwhelming to see that you are just one small piece of the great picture. However, that's comforting. But when we see all the massive amounts of information that we cannot process on our phones and on our screens and the news and all of these media, the media that's constantly bombarding us, that feels overwhelming and discouraging, and it also trains our mind to constantly process information instead of experience, right? And so taking breaks from your screen even just getting up and walking outside for just even 5 minutes, just taking a few breaths, just concentrating, doing a walking meditation, just walking slowly. You know, Thich Nhat Hanh talks about walking as if your feet are kissing the ground. And that is such a beautiful image to have, to just really, it just can completely shift your energy. And you can do that for just a minute or two a day. Take a break. Come back to your desk and you'll feel refreshed. And when you feel again, you can take another break, you know. So we can do what we can to take breaks. Some of us cannot perhaps get away from our desks. Some of us cannot get outside. Some of us live in the world right now where we're going into the winter, right? And so it's cold and it's a different thing. But I also love, I think taking walks in the winter is an amazing thing. We can always find a way to connect with nature and to that nature, and notice how nature grounds us and helps us to feel more centered in ourselves, and how it changes our thinking, how it instantly changes us from being like processing, you know, animals to experiencing animals or experiencing beings, right? It's like this really amazing phenomenon. And if you pay attention to it, it's really wonderful. So just wanted to share that with you. I'm working currently still working on my contiguous sleeve sweater, and it's coming along. So this is so for my knitting in the summer, I've just decided I'm going to do things where I learn new techniques. And I'm really excited about this new technique because it's like, you know, Elizabeth Zimmerman, right? What was that? She said, this is your knitting and you have control over it, right? And so you find a way to kind of, I haven't come very far. I know it looks like I haven't come very far, but it's been a rough couple of weeks. So the contiguous shoulder, you basically are creating a seam that goes across the back neck, and then you come to the shoulder and you sort of create a sleeve cap. You do increases on the sleeve cap. You do that simultaneously because you're going back and forth. So it's knit, purl, back and forth, and you're increasing until you get to the wanted length of your shoulder, and then you increase from there. And it's kind of a systematic increase over to create the sleeve cap. And then you do that until you get to just about like the width of your shoulder, and then you knit back and forth to create the neckline that you want. You pick up stitches and you knit back and forth. And I'm so excited about learning this technique because I love sweaters like Elizabeth Zimmerman's, you know, I love her. I love Elizabeth Zimmerman, and this is my Bible, my knitting Bible. If you don't have this book, it is such an amazing resource, especially for beginner knitters. It's so empowering, and she has such amazing, simple techniques. I mean, she has here some beautiful color charts that you get in the book. She has the Elizabeth Zimmerman, the EPS, the Elizabeth Percentage System, that can help you design any kind of sweater, right? So you have a measurement around the middle, you have, and you take percentages and you base it on that, and you have the sleeves, and these are all bottom up sweaters, and they come up, and you can make beautiful sweaters. I did this is how I learned to knit, and I love her. I think she is just such an empowering teacher and such an inspirational figure. I love Elizabeth Zimmerman and her quotes, and so I've been using that for years, but lately I've been wanting a different style sweater that's perhaps a little more fitted around the shoulder, and I'm just interested in expanding. I've done some patterns over the winter, and now I want to try to again come back into my own knitting. I want to be able to design my own sweaters using something other than a yoke or a raglan top, raglan kind of thing. This is a construction that is a little bit more fitted, and I think once you're able to master that, like this is what I'm thinking, I can make all kinds of garments, and if it's top down, you can try it on as you go, and then you can always knit it down from there and in the round, and so that's really, really exciting. I'm really enjoying it. I like this yarn. As I mentioned before, it's this burnish yarn from Pearl Soho. It's a rayon that's made from bamboo. It's very soft, very light, perfect for transitional seasons, perfect for spring, perfect for fall. And I'm doing it in this red and this black. It'll be a really nice, I'm going to do a stripe, thick striped down. So I'm going to have a red kind of, yoke, if that is, it's not really a yoke, but top, and then it'll go into thick stripes. So I'm really excited about doing that. And I'm going to see what I can do with that technique. And I really would love to make a jacket kind of cardigan. That I think that would be really great to do. So this is like how I'm kind of getting through my lack of practicality, because right now I don't really need any sweaters and I'm kind of set with what I have. So that practicality part of knitting is missing, but I can use the summer to sort of, because it's really going to be just another couple of months before I'm going to start to think about the fall and what I want to wear. So I have a couple of months to learn some new techniques, and what I'd really like to do is learn how to make a sweater in a new way, and be able to create my own designs in a new way. Well, because I love patterns and patterns are amazing. I also think it's really empowering to be able to make your own knits and design your own knits. You don't have to even come up with amazing designs. You could just say, well, I want to imitate this. Really what it is I have a blazer, and I was like, you know what, I'd love to make a knitted blazer. I think it'd be really cool to have a really soft, sort of stretchy, casual kind of blazer in like a tweedy brown or something like that. It would be a great alternative to a cardigan. So that's where I'm at with all of that kind of stuff. Reading some interesting books. I picked up this one, Homo Deus, which is by Harari, who wrote the Sapiens, which is such a great book. I have to say this book is really kind of discouraging, though I don't recommend it necessarily for these times. It's just it's kind of a statement on how we are moving from, what's the next stage of humanity's development, and that we are moving towards a more kind of artificial intelligence future. And while I don't think that that's, no one can predict the future. No one knows what's going to happen. I think it's an interesting thing to look at, and hearkening back to what I was just talking about with this connection between nature and ourselves and our creativity. I think we need to move in a direction where we are more creative and we are more reliant on nature and and acknowledge our symbiotic relationship with nature, because that is going to it's going to change how we live. Once we realize that we are really interconnected and one with nature, literally, nature's health is our health. Once we realize that, I think it can only change us, and it's happening. There's also this like movement, towards that. There's people who are living more symbiotic lives, with lives that are more in symbiotic relationship with nature. We see that is something that's definitely happening. And this is the other side of it. This is the technological side of it. And so that is it's always good to know, right? But he's a great writer. I love Homo Sapiens. I thought that was a great book to just have. Every person should read that, just to kind of have an understanding of like the history of humanity and the world before humanity. It's a really, really amazing book. I'm also reading, this is a really cool book, Feeding Your Demons by Sultram Alyon, who's a Buddhist teacher who I love, and she's written, it's a new type of Jungian psychology, or it's based in Jungian psychology. It's about our shadow selves and getting in touch with our shadow selves, and how that can enrich our lives, and that we can actually, instead of unconsciously acting out our shadow selves, the shadow is the part of ourselves that is unacknowledged, the darkness in ourselves. We may not even realize, for example, that we have a temper that we take out on people, or that we have a nasty side that we take out on people. We may not even be aware of it. And when we're not aware of that, we just continuously act out on it. Once we become aware of that tendency, we can at least be aware that it's happening. And so that's part of what Jungian psychology is. There's archetypes, and there's there's it's a whole thing that I don't know that much about, but I know this much about. But this is a little bit different. This is the act. She talks about ways that we can connect with our shadow and understand our shadow selves. And actually, there are healthy outlets for us to kind of move with our shadow self so for example, you might be someone who has a great need for independence, and that could come out in negative ways in, for example, a relationship or a marriage or something like that. However, if you are aware of it and you're acknowledging it, you can then give yourself outlets for your independence, right, in ways that are healthy and productive towards your relationship. So this is a really great book. Really like it a lot. And her website is really amazing. Even if you don't like this book, there's other books that are great. I love Buddhist texts. And of course, I'm just, always reading something about my guru, Neem Karoli Baba, who was an amazing being. And so this summer, I'm just picking up Miracle of Love and just reading the stories. These are just stories that were collected by Ram Dass and others who spent time with him. And he was such a beautiful person. It talks about the amazing things that happened when people were around him. Just really amazing, uplifting stories. Always good to have Maharaji stories to lift your heart and spirit during these really challenging times. And I think that's about it. I don't really have anything else to share. I'd love to hear from you. What's going on with you in your life, and how are you getting through these times? What are you doing? What are you knitting? Are you out in your garden? Would you like to see knitting? Would you like to see gardening videos? But that's all for now. Sending you so much love and blessings and peace. And until next time, bye-bye.